Miss Kennedy, would you get me a medium dry vodka martini?
What is
Shaken, not stirred.
James Bond was wrong. Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it's Wednesday, we have a cocktail video for you. It's been a while since we did a cocktail video. We had a bunch of tastings, we had some spirit awards, some other things. So today we're actually getting back on track and doing a cocktail. And today we're covering one of the most ubiquitous cocktails that exists today that we haven't covered. And yes, I know we haven't covered the old-fashioned, but we'll get there. And that is, of course, the martini. This is going to be specifically the Dry Gin Martini. I'm not doing a vodka martini because you shouldn't ever do a vodka martini. It's fine. If you like vodka martinis, do your vodka martinis. Hence the beginning where I said that James Bond was wrong. James Bond historically orders his martinis shaken, not stirred, and with vodka. You should not shake your martini. You should stir it. Shaking is good for a lot of cocktails. There's nothing wrong with shaking, but for a martini, you're not adding any kind of citrus juice, at least in this version of it anyway. We don't need to add a lot of dilution. All we're trying to do is chill it down. So all the shaking is going to do is going to add extra dilution to the cocktail, which you really don't need in a martini. A martini, you kind of want it to be a fairly spirit-forward cocktail. Now, as far as the history, the martini is one of these cocktails that has sort of evolved over a period of time. Probably the earliest one that we know of is the gin cocktail, which we may do on this channel at some point. I'm not going to do it today, though. I don't have the correct bitters to use. It uses Bogart's bitters or Boker's bitters, depending on your interpretation of that. And that is Jerry Thomas in the Bombay Guide, or that book's actually released under a couple of different names. So the one I have is listed as the Bombay Guide, but it's the first cocktail book released in 1862. So as this cocktail sort of evolves over time, it originally started off with a sweet gin, Old Tom gin, and a sweet vermouth, and oftentimes some kind of simple syrup or a gum syrup. The one I'm going to do is the one that I prefer, which is the Dry Gin Martini. So the Dry Gin Martini basically starts in the 1890s at some point. And really by the time you get into the 1920s and 1930s has sort of reached its peak of popularity. And it's popular later on, but that's like its heyday. Now, today, I mean, the big question with the gin martini is always this, and this is where we're sort of, the history of the martini is, I think, less important, or less we're going to talk about, since it's sort of an evolving cocktail. It's always been evolving. So the big question with a martini has always been the ratios. We all know that a gin martini, and well, maybe you don't know. If you don't know, I'll tell you, but most of us who are into martinis know that it is some combination of dry vermouth and gin, typically a London dry gin or a Plymouth gin. I prefer London dry gin, specifically Bombay Sapphire East. That is my gin of choice. But the ratios are kind of all over the place. So I'm going to do two. And one is going to sound crazy to the modern gin drinker. We're going to do an equal parts gin martini, dry gin martini. So that's going to be 1.5 ounces of your gin and 1.5 ounces of your dry vermouth. Like I said, a lot of, sort of modern gin purists are going to be like, it's crazy, you shouldn't have nearly that much dry vermouth in there. It is a very common recipe. The Old Waldorf Astoria cocktail book from the 1930s and the Savoy Hotel cocktail book from the 1930s both list this as an equal parts cocktail. The one I'm going to do as equal parts is going to be a little bit different than the one that I drink today. The one that I drink today is going to be about a 1:6 ratio, which is pretty middle of the road for a dry gin martini. For gin purists, there's some that would prefer even drier than that. And sort of more common would be maybe a little wetter than that. Wetter meaning a little bit more dry vermouth. So now that we know a little bit about this, we're going to go forward and make ourselves a dry gin martini. All right, we've got our mixing glasses ready, so we're going to start off. Now I just realized I'm going to do a little bit something different with our equal parts. This is going to be a more citrus forward martini. So my gin's getting switched up too. I just realized I don't actually have any lemons. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a tiny dash of lemon juice in there. That's going to give us our first part of ours. We're going to do a little bit of citrus in there. And then we're going to go with our dry vermouth. So in mine, again, we're going to do a 6:1. So I'm going to start off with a 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth in our equal parts. doing 1.5 ounces of dry vermouth. And also, in this one, very common in early martinis, we're going to do a couple of dashes of orange bitters. Now, for our equal parts, I'm going to use, this is a Castle and Key. This is our seasonal gin, I think from this last spring. It's a nice citrus forward gin. If you're somebody that doesn't really like that sort of juniper-y kind of gin where it's tastes like a Christmas tree, something like this would be something you'd like a lot. So I'm going to go for 1.5 ounces for Castle and Key seasonal. And for the Mike's Dry Martini, we're going to go 3 ounces of my preferred Bombay Sapphire East. Now obviously this has got 3 ounces of gin in it, so drinking kind of slow. Okay. Martini is a very simple cocktail, and yet its simplicity kind of makes it difficult because everybody likes their martini a different way. So let's start off over here. One thing to do when you're mixing, just hold the bottom of your glass and just kind of feel as that gets cooled off there. Alright. One thing, you can leave your mixing glasses in the freezer too if you want to. I leave that in there. It's not really necessary, but it's certainly an option. We got our equal parts martini. That ice kind of melts in there together. Has to be a little bit of a pain to mix, but that's all right. Okay. Just give that a good mix. All right. So we got those all mixed up. Now, let's get ourselves some glasses. And as always, glasses have magically appeared before us. So we're going to start off with mine. Now, I'm going to garnish my gin martini, the very dry gin martini, which is 1 olive. And this one, we don't have any fruit juice in here, or any citrus juices, anything like that, so we can just single strain it. That'll be just fine. We have a little bit of citrus juice in here, but again, it's just a splash. I'm not worried about getting pulp in there. And again, normally I would garnish this with a twist of lemon, but don't have any lemons, unfortunately. And so we're just gonna strain that right on in. Now, obviously, this is my martini of choice, so I'm actually gonna go for the citrus forward martini first, and we're gonna see what we think of that. It's a pretty good cocktail. It's again, it wouldn't be my choice probably. If it's somebody that's new to martinis, this is probably a way to go. Another variation we could have tried, but I didn't because, to be honest, I don't like it very much, is a dirty martini. So dirty martini, you're just going to toss a little bit of the brine from your olives into there. But the citrus is coming through very well. The citrus in the gin is mixing up with the citrus in our orange bitters and our little splash of lemon juice. It is maybe clashing just a tiny bit with the dry vermouth. So again, if I had this one to do over again, I think that the equal parts, well, it is a classically accurate cocktail. There's nothing wrong with that cocktail. It probably wouldn't be the way I'd go. I think the same cocktail with even a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 ounces of gin to 1 ounce of dry vermouth, and then your citrus, your orange bitters, would probably come out a lot better. But it's light, it's refreshing. It's a little more summery, I think, or springy, which isn't great for right now. But yeah, that's a good cocktail. Again, a little bit more dry vermouth than I'd prefer, but a good cocktail. So again, this one, I feel weird tasting this because I've tasted this a million times, but. Yeah, that's just great. Again, this is going to be a very dry cocktail. It's going to be very spirit forward. But it's that dryness that I think, especially if you're going to be having cocktails throughout the evening, and again, you want to sip this, 3 ounces of gin here, don't forget. But you're not adding a bunch of sugars or a bunch of other stuff. It's a very, very clean cocktail, a very clean taste. You're getting a little bit of brininess from your olive, not very much because we're just using an olive and aren't actually putting any olive juice in there. And your Dolan is, you know, it's a dry vermouth, so that's dry. It's just a very crisp cocktail, not a lot of sweetness, really no sweetness to speak of. And yeah, I think, not surprisingly, this is the one I'd have. There is also some controversy I see in cocktail circles about using the martini glass. I'm a sucker for it. A lot of people think that it is impractical, which they are correct, it is impractical. This is the easiest drink to spill.
Eyes of caring about our family.
There's no lip, there's no anything. It's just very, very easy to lose your drink, but don't. I think it's stylish. I think it's designed for this drink, and if you have the choice and if you have the ability, I would definitely do it in a martini glass. So once again, yeah, really great, crisp cocktail. I wouldn't describe it as a wintry cocktail, but it is kind of nice in the winter time. Sort of, again, just that nice crisp flavor. Yeah, and this is probably not the last video we'll be doing about martinis. Again, there is the Jerry Thomas gin cocktail, which we might do at some point. Plus there's something like 1 million different variations in this cocktail. And so I think next time we might just try several variations and see which one I like the best. Except for this one will be my favorite, probably. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, and have a good drink. Have a good day.